Arvoyarns.
Oh, bless you. I wanted to ask
robots.
Yes.
about the China thing. So, like, there's now especially since like around the Edward Snowden time, it became more of a topical point of reference, especially in the West. But as far as actually saying, oh, whoa, if this is what we're doing, what is China doing? And they're like,
Yeah.
and so there's now this question of
Anxiety.
yeah, but more like is there going to be two timelines of civilization going forward where it's like whatever China has direct control over and then everybody else. And I mean, obviously there's other pockets where it's even worse, like North Korea is a lot worse and stuff. But like generally speaking on the meta level, China is the other superpower now. So,
yes.
and it looks like based on like having a lot to do with the fact that they don't have to worry about these 4 to 8 year plans and
Yes.
they can go more long term.
Yeah.
They can do what they want, but part of what they want is for you not to fuck with what they want. And so then they're like is there really gonna be like two timelines going forward?
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, you can ask yourself,
it's a
you know,
data
when did the illusion of one timeline take hold so
Right,
strongly?
but it's a
after
data
all, it wasn't that
analysis.
long ago that the
But it's
talking
a
about
data-
competing timelines.
we don't know if they'll compete. We
Okay.
don't know what they'll be. I mean, they sort of compete now, but that's not. It's too simple to say they just compete. But the thing is, really, right? Like you look at it from an economics point around data analysis. It's like, well, if I'm a data analyst, if I care about data at all costs, then in a way, like China's way better.
Oh yeah,
because
so that's
you
the
can
question.
get way more. Because
So,
you're like, I don't
yeah.
care if you're going to the bathroom or anything.
Yeah.
So the question is kind of the Chinese economic model, better? Is it going to be the dominant model? Like the elements of capitalism with a command and control aspect.
And is the American version of surveillance where it's not the government but advertisers who are the driving force behind it? Like,
It's a tough
better or
question.
worse?
Yeah. So I mean,
Many people.
if it's better or worse, we can't really personally attest to that because I have not been a Chinese citizen yet.
Yeah.
Maybe soon, but not yet. But whether so one thing that I always like, so there's this big anxiety, and I think part of that anxiety is left over from all the way back in the Cold War. The competing economic modalities, the titans, capitalism versus communism, which is the future, right?
Exactly.
And one thing that if people are like worried about China and things like that, one thing that I point out is like people thought America kind of had won, and America was on the pedestal for a long, long time, and then once you kind of reach a certain peak, and you break through to like another level of like economic specialization, it was like in the industrial age, the people who could produce the most were the best. In the mercantilist age, it was whoever could make the most gold and get the most physical territory under their control.
And now we're in the age of IP.
We're in the age of IP. Also finance, I think we're just kind of like, that's all.
So in the age of IP, the question is, right, in one way, then you want to be China too, because it's like, well, they can infringe on other people's IP outside the country, and they'll just make a company, and then China doesn't get them in trouble for it.
Yeah.
But then also, that really can fuck with IP being created in certain areas.
It is, especially when they're so big.
What's economies?
Yeah, and I think
economics view
also
of that?
at its worst, I mean, intellectual property could be like no better than mercantilism, where you're just hoarding patents and the rights.
We're already suffering from that a little.
Yeah, I mean, because
in medicine,
in the real world, it's hard to know, how to attribute things.
Yeah.
It's hard to know where an idea comes from, and if the goal of the whole system isn't so much to just use guns to protect someone's right to make money off of an idea. It's supposed to be about like encouraging the people who are just having ideas.
Yeah, well,
for those ideas to flourish. You know what I mean? How do you find it?
Patents were kind of a stopgap solution, and they've always been imperfect because it's how long you have a patent for is completely arbitrary. It just depends on like how much you can convince the government to let you have a monopoly on this idea for, right? And or how much money you make is so. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about is partially a solution to patents, and that's something I'm actually working on right now. Not that I've solved the problem of patents, but so here's a little thought example, right?
Yeah,
so in our current healthcare climate and medicine and pharmaceuticals and everything, so what are the incentives to, let's say, cure a super expensive disease like diabetes? What are the incentives? Like, who's going to go out there, cure diabetes, and why, right? If you want to have smart, talented people research on it, you have to pay them. To do the research and the trials and everything costs a lot of money, and it's a gamble because you don't know until you've done all that if it's going to work or not. So that costs a lot of money. So a patent is the solution there because for a set number of time you can charge whatever you want for that. And the pharmaceutical industry has been taking liberties, like this like the EpiPen scandal but what if you just wanted to?
Are you talking about Theranos?
Theranos, the world slayer?
No, is that a thing?
No, the Marvel thing. Right, yeah.
Theranos, the company with the woman who.
Well, she was just
with the diabetic.
No,
I didn't hear
it was
about
like
that.
It was like a little micro blood test thing, and she just lied to all her investors.
So you said EpiPen.
Technology.
Okay, yeah. No, EpiPen. I said.
Yeah.
The guy started charging like $5,000 for an EpiPen. Well, anyway,
Martin
Shkreli.
Yes.
But he did that with pills, I think.
Whatever it was, there was some
like
but
type of STD medication.
So the
still fucked.
Yeah, it is. So you have a patent for, let's say, 10 years or 20 years, right? And you just made this huge investment. You want a return on that. So are you going to be more incentivized to actually cure the thing? One pill, done, diabetes? Or do you want to make something which will, ease the symptoms, and you need to, do it all the time? And
so
I'm
thinking about that.
This is a fundamental issue, especially in healthcare and in education, where it doesn't fit into like a commodity model so easily.
I was just writing. There's this phenomenon called Ehrum's law, which is Moore's law reversed. I don't know if you guys know the microchip thing.
Yes.
With the transistors, like every year, number of transistors on a chip doubles. Computer price halves not every year, like every 18 months or something. Anyway, so this is the reverse of it, and they've shown this trend of for every drug per billion, the number of drugs we're getting of life-changing drugs is being cut in half, and the amount of money is doubling for each drug over the year, and it's like Anyway, so
it's like a
that's really bad.
It's like a gold rush.
It is, and these patent things are wild. I mean, like there's problems like it's called evergreening. So you don't have to. You have a patent that only lasts for a set time, and evergreening is trying to prolong the effective length of your patent.
Okay.
So that's litigating, like putting people into lawsuits if they try after it's become generic, or to modify your drug a little bit, so that you can claim a new patent on essentially the same active ingredients. So it's just prolonging the shit out of patents. And the FDA doesn't regulate price. It only looks at effectiveness. So you can price your drugs at whatever. Anyway, so this thought experiment, the incentives to cure something like diabetes are all wrong under the patent system. But what if, like, you cure diabetes today? How much money will you save? Everyone doesn't have diabetes. That's one of the most expensive diseases that you have. So what if the person who cured diabetes got a portion of those savings for a while, and then anyone could produce the drugs generically and no patent.
It's like, but then other people aren't making money, and it's like, what? So you want the pharmaceutical companies to give?
No, the pharmaceutical company would get a portion, like the government at the end of the day, all of healthcare saves money from not having to treat.
So all of healthcare would calculate that cost and then give you a total sum of it?
Let's say you could figure that out, right? Let's say like diabetes costs about, I don't know, it's like a couple billion every year.
Okay, if that happens, do you think that there's a dystopia potentially where companies make secret wings where they try to at least completely propagandize a populace to convince them that something is problematic enough to purchase and that they can substantiate as a problem, and then they go in and go swoop in and save the day.
But how would you demonstrate what you've saved at the end of the day? Because if it was a fake threat, then it costs it would have resulted in no savings.
But the thing is that it's completely relative, because ultimately it's whatever the market will bear. Like, you could say this product is bullshit. You could say that service is what the hell. There's things for everything that you can buy.
It's the snake oil problem.
And so we were talking before about
if they value it, is it snake oil?
Yeah. Well, this would be so in my hypothetical, it would be only things that you can actually demonstrate and know. So.
Well, it's a similar problem to like defining someone's human potential.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, okay,
what if
they're spending money all this way, but like under what heading? Like, oh, well, this is self-care because they have this disease that we didn't know existed or whatever.
If you could go back in time, right?
If you go back in time.
And shoot Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak when they were kids, you would know today how much money would have been lost on the economy. Like that.
Well, that's a tricky example. I mean, that seems harder.
You don't think about that sometimes?
Oh,
of course it's harder in time travel, but I'm just saying, like, you would know today how much money Apple has made since they founded it.
Okay.
So if you went back in time and shot them, you could say, like, so many $1 trillion were lost. Right?
No, but that wouldn't even be close to it, Dorian.
Whatever the number is.
Because it's whatever their market cap is or whatever the hell. But then what about all the technologization which
surrounding
everything else, which would be exponentially more.
So that's why.
I don't know. And other types of capital besides money, like, wow, this Mac really helped me with these pictures I like.
I don't know. I feel like that's
a good segue into Anyway.
Well, I feel like that version of it's like insoluble in a sense.
Course.
Like, I feel like I mean, it makes more sense to me in the case of like where, lots of people, where there's like a democratic element. Everyone who has diabetes,
Steve Jobs.
Like they can all attest.
Our
to
emperor
something, right? Like if 300 million people are saying that like this has made like tangible benefit in my life. I used to spend X amount of money on this. I mean, that seems quantifiable.
Yeah,
and is that
like the story of one company though? Because you never know
is that valid enough?
Who would have sprung up to take their place?
Because like think about like Instagram, right?
True.
You've got like
that's a good point.
Or you've got like the butt girl.
It would have been Macintosh. Anyway,
Macintosh butt girl. Yeah. Macintosh apple bottom butt girl.
Windows,
So Macintosh apple bottom butt girl like becomes super
with the fur.
With the fur.
Okay.
Everybody's looking at her. You've got tens of millions of subscribers, people that follow you, whatever, and they're like, I want this person in my life, like, and then there's like some scientist that says, all she's showing you is her butt, and you're like, but that is incredible to me.
It is life.
It is life, and so at that point, what is considered an ailment for economies?
Yeah. I mean, I think you can still, like, if it were costing people money to not look at the butt, if it were like, if people, right? If people were, like in this depressive stupor all day, having to visit their therapist because they're like, I don't know what the butt looks like.
I haven't seen it.
Then that's something you could quantify. But the true good
so it's something
is elusive.
So you suffer actively without.
Yes. And I have a simple answer for you. Multiplier. Just take it. Yeah, you just slap a multiplier in front of it. So let's say how Apple has over the span of Apple existing made so many $1 trillion, right? But who would have been there if Apple hadn't been there? You just say, well, we'll just say like 25% of.
Nice.
Yeah, easy.
Pop a number on it.
That's how economics works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, but there's something profound about that.
Arvoyarns.